started. Okay, we're broadcasting. I don't know why. We're broadcasting. It's live. Keep it goes down again.
No offense, but that's the worst place to put the microphone. Okay, so we didn't have any people, so we're going to just finish with the mic.
Yeah, well, the mic was for Alamo, who didn't show up. He had a microphone in his hand when he does the introduction.
See, don't come far back. Let me show you how far you can come. Like, if you're coming forward, you're gonna step forward. Step forward.
Starting to lose it. Okay.
Yeah. A half a board. No, go back.
More.
Go back.
Say you want to be under these lights.
Right.
Say
right. So you come back, you
see it clear for
you dark.
The shadows, that's clear. See what you side of your face.
Right.
So that's
okay.
So once you get to the point where you see shadows,
yeah, you should put a mark.
Right here. I'm gonna stay right here, right in this light, right here.
Put that off further back and you're done.
Okay. Meanwhile,
so we're streaming now, guys. So
okay.
Well, hello out there in television land. Do you mind if I visit with you a while? As you can tell, I'm the chef of the past.
You let me know when I can start.
Good. When you're ready, I'm just starting this camera on both cameras.
Mm-hmm.
Need anything?
Yeah, there's a plug back there.
Well, anyway, we're going to start.
Yeah, we.
We're at the association. Welcome to the presentation of Know Thyself. This is the day designated to love, known as Valentine's Day. We all know that every day is a day designated to love. Powers that be, for whatever reason, designated February 14th, Day of Love. We're going to address the subject of, but it won't be in the romantic sense, popularly known as, but it's a day of love that we want to address, the love of self. How to understand. To know thyself is to love thyself, and to love thyself is to know thyself. And so we're going to begin that presentation. First, I want to introduce you to where we're at. We're at the New Amsterdam Musical Association. Started in 1905. It's the oldest African-American musical association in the entire world. So you're getting a presentation. We're giving you the oldest information presented by the oldest race on the planet and being presented at the oldest African-American on the planet, called Know Thyself. This is an organization, a musical organization that's been around during the time when there was no African-American musical association in the city of New York. So this was the place that all the musicians had to come to. People like U.B. Bless, place that they did their thing. Some of the known great, we believe, had to have passed through here, because when you don't have that many places you can go, you had no choice but to have passed through here. In Harlem, where was notoriously known for its rent park. We know that Fats Waller was up doing his thing, and a few other people came through here. So the New Amsterdam Musical Association, because it was Amsterdam Association at one particular time, but now it's New Amsterdam Musical Association. All right. I am what is called a missionary. My mission is called One People Earth, the Internal Revolution. The internal revolution, now that's where the love of self comes in at. We want to internalize the revolution. History, we experience all revolutions. Political revolutions, social revolutions, ecological revolutions. But now the most important revolution that there is must take place, and that is the revolution within our own body. And what we mean by is we have to begin to take biochemical responsibility, because our body is a chemistry. And nature is chemistry. And the way God made nature was as a base chemistry to survive. But we are in an environment that has turned into an acidic. The air is acidic. The earth is acidic. The foods that they're selling us is acidic. So upon each one of us to begin the chemistry of our bodies and the chemistry of the planet in which we live, and ability for that. This is where the new movement has taken us. We've got to begin to understand that if we want to curtail the death rates in our families and in our communities. I don't have to tell you about the people who are dying every day, or the people that are falling sick, falling ill. How many people are dying at a very, very young age? There's a reason for that. And that is because the base chemistry that God set for life to survive in is being blasphemy by industries for profit. So this revolution has to be internal. In a spiritual sense, Armageddon is taking place at the cellular level. And we're in relation with the revolution we speak taking place, but it happened external. So looking inside of our bodies, we understand that we have trillions of cells that comprise the human body. And in that cells, 5 cells, that the entire body, all of those cells swim in two fluids. Two is helium, that according to how those fluids are, that's how healthy your cell is going to be. As healthy you are, is as healthy as your cell is going to be. You keep that water, those two waters, keep them, and those cells are going to thrive. Once they constipated and congested with a whole lot of gunk and gooey mass, slows then begins to decrease, and the cells begin to die. Cells die. You die. I die. We die. We are the cells. So each cell that can feel, it has emotions, and so basically 100 trillion tendons in your body, all depending upon how it can best thrive. It's dependent upon our consciousness to be able to make the right choices to create the environment. Now, just as we cannot survive the environment, neither can ourselves. Do you think that you could survive in an environment full of hot lava spewing down out of volcanic ash? Do you think you could? Well, that's what happens with ourselves. Ourselves are getting hot by choices that we make. Certain things are hot for the medicines that we take, too hot for the cells. It burns the cells up. That's like living near an erupting volcano with hot spewing lava. That, and neither can ourselves. We are ourselves and ourselves is us. We have to have the same base chemistry in our environment in order to survive. So, what is coming at us subliminally and physically is, well, let's look at the Super Bowl game. Everybody, the Super Bowl just passed last weekend. And we got the All-Star game coming up in this upcoming weekend. And our athletes are some of the most beautiful creatures on the planet. Our athletes and our artists and our dancers, I mean, they're magnificent to behold. When we watch these games, we are learning about the potential. We learn something about ourselves potentially, physically, what we could do potentially. We watch athletes and they remind us of who we can be or what we can do. We see the human potential at its greatest, at its best, at flight. They're marvels to behold. But I have the unenviable task of reminding you that that's not the greatest game on earth. The golf game is not the greatest game on earth. The U.S. Open is not the greatest game on earth. The basketball, NBA, the NFL, NBA, none of those are the greatest game on this planet is taking place right inside of our bodies. The greatest athletic feats is taking place right in the structure. The way we are made, we cannot begin to appreciate God's divine plan for humanity until we understand how we are made, how we're built, and how we are designed, and the chemistry therein, and how it is fired, all of the things that are taking place within our bodies. Is that game is between regeneration and degeneration. Those are the two teams. Life and death. Teams, and there's certain ways of calling those teams. Hydration, dehydration. That's the greatest game on earth. That's the greatest game on earth that we need to concern ourselves with. And we have to become players in those games. Hydration, dehydration. Regeneration, degeneration. Life, death. And then we're not made from the world. We're made of the earth. Our bodies are comprised of materials from the earth, those elements of the earth. And then there's the world. Our great artists, athletes, poets, singers, dancers, whatever God-given talent you come into this planet with to be able to share and offer us. When it comes to the world, it has to be used for either life or death. It has to be used for either regeneration or degeneration. It has to be used for either hydration or dehydration. It's for either alkalinizing or acidity. Those are the games. That's the greatest game on this planet. And it's not taking place on any television. It's taking place inside of our bodies. And we pay attention to that if we want to enjoy longevity, if we want to enjoy our family and our friends for as long as we'd like to enjoy them. Now, a person that says, I'm not going to stop doing this, I'm not going to stop eating that, I'm not going to stop drinking this, and versions on anyone want to continue to enjoy life the way they want to enjoy life, because God gave you something that no one can take away, and that is a choice. You have a choice on how you want to live your life. You see, come here as zillionaires in the area of chi. Chi, we all are rich, filthy rich with energy. And as we live our life, we spend so much of that energy. And as you spend that energy, you're spending parts of your life. And so it's just like the money. It's just like having money in the bank. If you have millions in the billions in the bank, and you're spending billions frivolously on that is not pertaining to life, or that is not sustaining, self-sustaining, eventually those billions are going to run out. Well, that's how it is. When we spend our energy frivolously on certain foods intakes that we take in, and certain things that we spend our energy on that exhaust the energy, it is being spent, whether it's eating or whether it's being over sexually active, or whether it's just running around. It is said that the science has found out is that those animals that move the slowest and take its time through life is the one that enjoys longevity. And all those creatures that run through life very fast, you know, the gazelles, the lions, all those creatures that move that fast, they have the shortest lifespan. We're not taught this in school. We're not learning things like this about how to achieve longevity. We're not learning the proper things about the chemistry of our body and how it's made. We didn't know you have to keep a homeostasis balance of 7.4. But everything that they are selling us, everything that's coming through the media, I challenge you to pick your favorite sport athlete, your favorite actor, your favorite singer. I challenge you to find any artist anywhere in the world spokesman for something that is healthy for the human body. I challenge you to come up with any artist, athlete or artist, that's a spokesperson for any product that is really good for the planet or the body. That's not the way the world is run. The world is not run, it's not based on that. That's not the way the world works. The world works in the opposite direction. The world is an opposing force. The world is working against nature. I would like to see some athlete or some actor, or some artist, some singer that's grapes or orange juice or something that's good for the body. If it's good for the body, it's good for the planet. If it's good for the planet, it's good for the body. But everything that comes across your television screen, every product that the body consumption is not good for the body, and it's not. Now, you can write into here, you can challenge me on that. Come up with somebody, come up with the name of some celebrity and some product that is good for the human body. Work that way. The world is in direct conflict with life. It's an anti-life world. And so in order for you to take your God-given gifts and achieve celebritydom, you have to sell the devil's urine. You have to sell the devil's urine. That's just the way the world works. So I also challenge, I'm an actor, a performer, a singer. I'm using my God-given gifts and my talents as an actor, singer, spokesperson to represent life, to be the spokesperson for life. And life is what we're here to experience, to enjoy, and not to burn it out in a matter of 30 years, 40 years. But we were created the way it regenerates itself every 7 years. You have a new body every 7 years. So that tells you right there that every 7 years, if your body's regenerating itself, if each of the tissues and organs are constantly replacing itself, no machine on earth, there's nothing that man on earth that can do that. God has done that for our bodies, which means that we weren't built to last 30 or 40 years. We were built to last for a century or better, have longevity. In the days of Methuselah and them, they were like 900, almost, they were living almost a millennium. Because the environment that they were living in was in the base environment. And they were living in harmony with that. We're no longer living in harmony with the environment, and we're not living in an environment that conforms to our body's constitution. It's deteriorating. This environment that they've created is deteriorating. So suffice it to say that we don't age. Age has nothing to, it has nothing to do with why we die. We don't die because we've gotten older, and what happens is we're becoming more and more decrepit through the deterioration that is taking place. And that's why this doesn't work and that doesn't work, and stiffness sets in, and it's a congestion, it's a constipation, all in the arteries, and it's clogging up, and that's what's happening. So age has nothing to do. That deterioration has nothing to do with how the earth is on its axis. Time has to do with what is taking place. Except the fact that over time, that accumulation of deterioration is taking place, but that's it. But it is not time. Time is not the culprit itself. It's the environment, and it's the self-inflicting that we do. It's our own bad habits. Habits that we are programmed, that we've been indoctrinated to. You see, we have reprogram ourselves, deprogram the old, and reprogram ourselves with the new. And so this revolution has come into form. This is where we take this day, designated love, to understand, yes, I love my family. Yes, I love my friends. If I had a wife, I love my wife and my children. But more importantly, because without me, that love for anything else would be non-existent. So this is what the internal revolution is entailing. Love of self. Know thyself is understanding that we don't fully know ourselves until we understand that we're responsible for 100 trillion tenets that is in our bodies. They're all alive and well in us to make better choices. And we know that we're responsible for tenets in our bodies, then we'll begin to know ourselves. Now, right now, I'm going to move into the next phase of this. I have a young man with me who I respect him enough to invite him on this presentation. He has a very inquisitive mind. He has a mind like a sponge. It thinks very scientific. He has acute information and knowledge, chemistry, and the science, dietary sciences, that he and I can have a discussion. I like where his mind goes. I like some of the things he has to say. And we want to invite Mr. Armand onto please have a seat. Can we be seen here? I mean, on that camera?
We have to move the camera.
Yeah, we'll keep that in the middle. Yeah.
Greetings, everyone. And thank you, Northstar, for your kind words. I appreciate it. I'm honored that you say such things about me.
So anyway, are we good? With
You're good.
Angle? Oh, okay.
I'm taking care of this.
What is your last name?
Military.
Armand Military. Armand Military. Did you get kidded about that military last
No,
name?
actually, I was always kidded about the Armand.
The Armand.
Yes, they went, well, it's interesting that they did go with processed food. Almond Joy was a joke. I got a lot of it.
You got a lot of that, Armand.
But on the other hand, you could be speaking to Armand, who is, a fashionable Frenchman. That's bad,
All right. So we have had some very interesting discussions about biochemistry, and what we both share in common. Some of your influences, some of the people that have influenced you, that you name a few of them.
All right, I've listened on the radio. WBAI is 99.5 FM in New York, and on their programs, I have heard researchers such as Gary Null, a professor of human nutrition, formerly with the, I believe it was the Institute for Applied Biology, a Dr. Majid Ali.
Institute for Applied Biology. I like that name.
There was also a Dr. Majid Ali, formerly a head of pathology at Columbia Presbyterian. I believe he said it was 27 years. I'm trying to remember from having heard on the radio. In fact, he currently has a practice in Clifton, New Jersey, and other such persons. And it is from listening to your presentation and comparing it to the slightly differing viewpoints of these other persons as a, for want of a better term, an engineering type. It's my view that if I am not in a position to directly do all the research, I have to look for the common ground between the various philosophies. And the odds are that that which is common to all is more likely to be true. And that was covered very well in your earlier presentation today. The concept of eating the foods that we are evolved to eat. Now, you notice I said evolved as opposed to having been created for us, God-given or what have you. But these are different views of the same phenomenon. You could say that you have, wave versus particle. Some of you may have heard that in physics, and I think it applies here as well. The model is not as important as is the message, and the message is that you can easily change your diet. Now, when I say easily, I meant that it doesn't mean it doesn't require a large amount of willpower, but you can. It's within our grasp. It's not. In fact, it's less expensive. If you're a vegetarian, you spend less money on food than if you're especially a heavy meat eater. But you can see immediate improvements in the body, and these persons that I have heard on the radio and that whose hypotheses I compare to yours, they all agree that this kind of that these kind of changes make immediate results in the body. And even if the exact reason why they happen is not fully understood, as an engineer, I have the attitude of, if it works, be happy.
Well, also, it not only works for your personal body, it works for the planet. Hence, the internal revolution is like when you take better care of your body, you're automatically an ecologist. You're automatically a part of the political. That automatically puts you a part of the social, political, ecological. You all the revolutions at once by adhering to the biochemistry, like conforming to the chemistry of the planet and the body. You are taking on all those revolutions at once. You internalize it. And I think that it's a great exercise. It ignited the imagination of a lot of people that such a thing could be done. And now, today it's about occupying our own body, taking back control of our health, understanding that is sick. Your doctor's sick, and the association that he works for is sick, and you can no longer depend upon them in that science, that failing science, to because all they will do is treat a symptom and they really don't cure anything, you know. And so a lot of people, they call it iatrogenic. Iatrogenics means doctor-induced diseases that are caused by when you receive certain medications, then you begin to get even greater those you first went to the doctor for before he gave you the medication. Now you've got a multitude of symptoms, and then you're taking medication for your medications. That's iatrogenics, and a lot of people are dying from that. And so that's what we're here. We're here. So my job, I want to be clear about this. My job is not to tell you what to eat and what not to eat. That's not my mission. My mission is not to choice. My mission is to get you to understand biochemically what happens in your body, certain things, make a better choice. People, I know crackheads, I know heroin addicts, I know people who that's how they want to go out. And I respect that. If you know that's, you give that up and you say, look, I like this, I enjoy this, you know, winos, people that don't want to give up a certain thing, want to go out. I know I don't have a funeral. They have exercised their God-given choice. My job is to bring information to people who are not aware chemicals that are coming in their food and in the water and in the air that is shortening their lives. And that's why people are dying prematurely. And my job is just to get you to understand that what we put in our mouth, what we put on our skin, what we put on our bodies, there are choices about that. Once you understand that, I have no more I have to say about that. You know, if you understand meats that you're eating, if you understand what's going, the chemicals and the steroids and all of that, you know, what say you?
All of the people that I've listened to certainly agree with that. Apparently, so from what I've heard, the number of chemicals that are introduced on a daily, yearly, whatever basis, the number of chemicals that are continuously in diets is astounding. Most of them don't have safety testing, at least that you or I as a civilian would accept as a deed. Those tests are in fact under the control of the people who introduce these substances as part of their marketing, as part of their industrial processes. And yet, we as individuals can observe experiments in ourselves almost immediately as we adopt, you'll forgive me for using a phrase which is not exactly yours, not exactly your point of view, but as you introduce a vegan diet. I personally was convinced by my father to become vegetarian some years ago, and the effect on my body is astounding. Now, do I have more to do? Yes, but anyone can do these things and see the results almost immediately. You made reference earlier to the social consequences that we are given. And I am told by the same people here that, amongst other things, number one cause of global warming are may disagree that there is global warming, but today it's wintertime and I didn't have to wear a coat, so I just thought I'd bring that up. The number one cause of global methane from the bodies of animals that are being raised to feed us. And the number one crop, or the greatest amount of crops to feed us, to feed the animals that we eat. It's so inefficient that apparently it takes 14 pounds of protein in the form of vegetation to create a pound of protein in the animal. And so between the chemicals and the processing of the food, plus even things like cooking the food excessively. And
you're moving
right.
too fast. Okay, let's go back to the methane that's coming from the gases of the animals, and then let's go back to the soybeans that has to be raised to feed these animals. That then global warming in one sense, that's messing with our breeding. But in another sense, they are cutting down trees a minute to come up with more land to grow those beans to feed those animals. It's costing us the lungs of the top of that. So because of that, you have a lot of people who got asthma. You have more asthma than you've ever had. Because of that. Now, I didn't want you to go too fast over before moving into destroying it. I mean, another topic in itself, right then and there, let's just a logical effect of eating animals. You know, it's not only damaging the cells in our bodies, not only and congesting and constipating our arteries. It's causing us to have cancer problems, and it's messing with the pan, jamming up the entire works. All right? So double whammy. It's destroying us internally, and it's destroying us. I wanted to paraphrase that point you made. Okay.
Yes, as I understand, there are. And unfortunately, I don't have the chemical name to hand, but it is readily available information. There are toxins produced from the consumption of meat. Interesting, you mentioned that this live the longest. Another thing is vegetarian animals live the longest.
They live the longest, yeah.
Now, it's interesting that you could say, well, wouldn't the carnivores have evolved also to live a longer time? Apparently, it would appear that it's more difficult. So, if we engage in a vegetarian or vegan diet, you could see immediate benefits in your blood pressure, in your blood chemistry, and so forth. And this is not, it's a sort of thing, I admit, I am repeating other people's claims. The ability to observe this in the body is immediate and can be measured, has been measured, is readily quoted on our source of knowledge, the internet.
Each individual, each person is going to have to experiment with their body. That's what I did. No matter how eloquent someone, the virtues of not eating meat and staying to a vegan diet, the only way you know the difference is to experience it, is to abstain one time, a few times, and let's see how their body feels. Your body is the most eloquent on the planet. There's no one that can speak greater than your own body, can tell you better than your own body. There's no greater persuasive power than your own body letting you know how great it feels when it doesn't have to process this, the substance, and when you feel that, you're gonna want to feel it again. It's like getting high. You're gonna want that high again and again and again. until eventually you free yourself from that, you know. But there are some people, they got to have animal protein. Cells cannot eat a hamburger. The cells cannot. So basically, what you gotta understand is that what is a protein is a gang. It's like a gang of hoodlums called amino acids that are just roaming. They just running together like that. That's all a protein is. It's a gang of amino acids that stick together. The body cannot use the protein. It can't use the whole gang. The body needs the amino acids. And it doesn't use it for fuel. It needs it to build tissues. That's it. It just needs it as a transportation system, and it needs it as building blocks. But we think that you have to eat it as a fuel, and that's misinformation. It's not a fuel. Actually, carbon and oxygen is the actual fuel, and the amino acids. There's a saying that using protein as a fuel is like living in a log cabin and taking the wood off of your cabin to throw it in the fireplace.
As it's my understanding that if you do burn proteins for nutrition, for caloric needs, the toxins, the amount of toxins produced by that conversion process are extreme. Part of the misinformation that we receive is the idea of exactly how much protein we need. We've been conditioned to believe that the word meat means protein, and protein is gold. That's what. It turns out that the amount of protein you need is a forkful. And unless you're Arnold Schwarzenegger, and if I remember the numbers correctly, in his best year as bodybuilder, he converted a whole 14 pounds of protein into muscle tissue. That's not a lot. So the toxins that are produced in the consumption of meat, even when it is being used to release its amino acids and build the body, those toxins are far higher than, I'm told, far higher than you get from vegetarian sources. And interestingly enough, the protein you get from a vegetarian source is more bioactive, or I should say, more bioabsorbable, so that if I consume that forkful of meat, I could need even less of a forkful of beans to get the same amount of protein. It was Gary Null, the person I quoted earlier, who described his early research at this Institute for Applied Biology. And he had to run some sort of tests, and he was surveying some foods to determine the amino acids contained within them. And he was discovering that all the materials that he was testing had protein. And in the books, in the textbooks of the times, it was claimed that only animal flesh provided complete protein. And here he was finding it elsewhere. And there was a big to-do about it. And he came to the conclusion that they were attempting to feed, and they were sending them for milk. The children, because the evaporated milk was causing diarrhea in the children. No, do that since could provide the protein, and the the key ingredient then is that the toxins are not there. And I see that as the as a very important common thread between your view and the views of the other individuals who advocate for vegetarian, vegan, fruit, what have you diets.
He's referred to my view a couple of times. I think I should make it clear in the audience that I'm heavily influenced by one Dr. Sebi, who says if God didn't make it, don't take it. That's the safest way to be. I'm also influenced by Dr. Robert Morse. You can find his channel on YouTube as well. And between the two, I'm a baby of between the two of them. Dr. Robert Morse, he will dabble in some hybrids. He still uses garlic. He believes in garlic. He still believes in comfrey. He believes in using some of the plants that Dr. Sebi has warned us. What we would say is not Dr. Sebi approved, you know. And then, you know, Dr. Robert Morse, well, Dr. Sebi also believed in that you could put fire to a lot of foods. You know, he was, you know, chickpea burgers, and, you know, he had all these recipes. He has a cookbook, whereas Dr. Robert Morse believes that we kill the electrolytes as we change the chemical structure and break it down and turn it to ash, and that ash turns to acidity in the body once you overcook it. And so I have to subscribe to a lot of Dr. Robert Morse, even though he dabbles in hybrids, because he doesn't dabble in genetically modified stuff. He just dabbled in some species that's been spliced and stuff like that. They're not what you call first the original food, you know, that God made. Or Dr. Sebi is just saying, well, stay with the original foods the best you can, because even those that have been spliced, you don't know what harm they may cause for you down the line. So it's just best to go all the way back home, you know, and play it safe, you know. So both philosophies sit well with me. So just for your edification, when he says my view, that's where my views are influenced by. Dr. Arnold Ehret, the mucusless diet, rational fasting. I believe that the far less that you eat is going to add to longevity. You know, fasting, intermittent fasting, not eating before 12, not eating after 8 o'clock, fasting 36 hours a week, taking 36 hours a week where you just don't ingest anything, maybe some lemon water, lemonade, or grape juice, like that. Dry fasting is best for 36 hours a week, 3 days a month on top of the 36 hours a week, 10 days at the end of every season, and maybe 30 days at the end of every year. Now, if you add all that up, 36 hours a week, 52 weeks, and then you add up 3 days at the end of every month, 36, that's another 36 days, and you add up another 10 days at the end of every season, that's another 40 days. You're moving close to like 175 days. Out of 375 days of the year, you pretty much knocked off what? Half.
Yes.
You know, of reducing your food intake by this thing called intermittent fasting. That contributes to longevity. Even if you have not gotten off of meat and you're doing intermittent fasting and you've reduced your intake of food and you're eating small quantities, you have prolonged your life a great deal.
I hear from the various sources that the one, well, we'll leave the analysis of whether or not they're truthful about all this, what the studies have shown. But one thing that they are willing to admit that is guaranteed to increase lifespan is reduction of calories. Calorie restriction, when they do it to laboratory animals and so forth, they live longer.
They live longer.
Just on the basis of reducing calories. And I'm trying to evaluate all of the views of all the people who bring research studies and other evidence, but there's always gray areas, and I have to decide on a policy for myself that's most likely to hit all the good spots. And as I can see it, if you get the farther away you get from something that our ancient ancestors would have consumed in the environment in which they evolved, then the farther away you get from that, the more risk or the more undefined conditions I'm even allowing that a processed food could supposedly be healthy. But in fact, every time I hear a study about these type of things, the answer is no. The more processing, the more synthetics, the more this is and that is, the least effective the nutrition. And people go on retreats, similar to the fasting, intermittent fasting that you described. There are people go on retreats and they become fully vegan for a few weeks. And at the end of the week, magical things have happened. Not everyone, it's not 100%, but one thing that is 100% is all of their numbers, all of their stats improve. Their blood pressure, their cancers arrest or disappear, and so forth and so on. Everything that can be described as positive that you can measure about them or even ask them for their sensations always improve. So even if you're not going to be 100% and go with Dr. Sevi's recommendations or what have you, in terms of at one end of the spectrum, you have a completely natural food pulled off a tree. On the other end of the spectrum, we have the synthetic, deep fried junk food. So place yourself as far as you can towards the safe end of the spectrum, and then be your own scientist, your own experimenter, and see how things are going.
They put a cell on a petri dish, and when a cell again is a living person, it's a living creature that can think and feel, and it can decide, it can make choices. And if you put a live piece of fruit on one end of the petri dish, and you put fried chicken on the other end of the petri dish, and that cell starts moving toward the hydration, it begins moving. I mean, the cell knows what it needs to survive. It begins to move toward the fruit, So I like having you here because you underline science. You bring the science to the discussion. My discussion, my topic is purely spiritual. I talk from a spiritually faithful point of view, and then and we know the highest form of science is spirituality. The highest form of politics is spirituality. But people need to hear the research, the scientific facts, that kind of information that you bring to this discussion.
Well, thank you. I mean, we are discussing this casually, so I didn't come armed with lists of studies and so forth, which have been to which I've been introduced by the various scientists that whose lectures I've attended or whose programs I listen to. But you'll forgive me. First of all, I'll start off by saying thank you very much, and I appreciate your compliments towards me. But I want to suggest that your viewpoint is also scientific, in the sense that if you can observe results, if I do this and it produces that, and it does so reliably, that's science. Now, do I know that the particular chemistry does this and so forth and so on? No, I don't. And the chances are focusing a little too much on small amounts of, on the microscopic details of a chemical mechanism without maintaining an overall view of the whole process can be self-defeating. I would like to say that I appreciate the compliment, saying that I view from a scientific point of view, I like to think I view it from an engineering perspective. I have to get the job done. One of the people that I am, one of the scientists that I listen to always talks about, look in the mirror, and there is your best doctor.
Yes.
Obviously, the doctor who takes down the field information. Now, he may consult with another doctor, the kind that has the MD after his name, but you do have to observe the effects on your own body, and you do have to review the literature. There's so much scientific literature that supports the idea of avoiding cooking of foods, avoiding chemicalization of foods, and avoiding toxins in foods, toxic foods themselves that are toxic, as well as the introduction of chemicals in industry that have toxic or unknown toxic side effects. That, as an engineer, I want to get the job done. So I'm going to play it safe. And I have a little example, a little thought experiment I would like to present to you. I could show you statistics, in fact, I could probably demonstrate it in real life, that if you were to cross the street with your eyes closed, you'll probably survive. I mean, the drivers are looking, they'll dodge you, they'll blow their horns at you, whatever. So I could say, ooh, let's take a chance and let's walk across the street with our eyes closed. But wouldn't you sneak a peek anyway? Wouldn't you look? Because it's so easy to play it safe. So in the case of the foods that Brother Northstar is talking about, and the dietary style that he is talking about, and that these others have talked about, you can play it safe. All you have to do is lean in the direction of what we evolved, the environment in which we evolved. And we're probably doing better than we are the further away we are. And that is a starting point. That's an engineering approach to life right there. It's before I cross the street.
Well, let me see now. There are arguments that say that the reason why our human brain evolved to the size that it has is due to meat eating. And so when you think of our dietary habits, as opposed to the way we are designed, how we're designed, I have to go with the truth is in the design of our bodies, the way our body is designed. And the way our body is designed is such that it's a very delicate instrument. The digestive system, it's a chemical factory. It manufactures all kinds of chemicals and enzymes to break things down into, basically our body is a juicer. It's a juicing machine. Because our intestines is an absorbing machine. It's not something like what a lion got. What a lion has is hydraulic acid that can dissolve your hand. If it swallows your hand, it will dissolve your hand in a matter of minutes before any worms or parasites or anything can fester from it. But our intestines don't work like that. Our intestines, we're not designed that way. We're an absorbing machine. Our things, our digestion starts right here in the mouth. It goes down this long tube right here, the esophagus, and then it begins to go through this tree trunk of all type of different branches. It breaks off into that, and every stop that it makes is being broken down. If it stops at the gallbladder and the spleen, they're all doing some work on it. If it stops at the pancreas, they're doing some work on it. Every part of the body in that digestive system is breaking it down. So by the time it gets down to the intestines, it soaks through the intestinal walls. So we're an absorbing machine. It wants to be liquid. It cannot be, but the way we have been programmed to eat is not according to our design. We are designed as diesel engines, and we're being sold gasoline, or vice versa. We're designed as gasoline engines, and we're being sold diesel.
I like that. I like your simile, because it turns out that the diesel engine was actually originally designed so that it could run without the need for petroleum. It was originally designed by Auto Diesel to run on cooking oil.
Mm-hmm.
Now, nowadays people do actually run diesels on cooking oil. It's it's a thing for people who are trying to stay off the grid. But it's amusing that you bring that up.
Yeah.
I would mention that you can tell what kind of foods it is that we're supposed to eat, or that is that we're evolved to eat, or that God made us to eat. You can use either way of looking at it, doesn't matter. By what it is that we dissolve in our mouths. If I put a piece of meat in the mouth of that lion or that cat, it'll begin to dissolve it, because its saliva is aimed at that kind of food. In our case, it's vegetation.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Yeah, we have peptides. We don't have hydraulic acid. If we had hydraulic acid in our mouth, it would burn up our tongue. Our tongue would dissolve. So we produce these peptides to break it down, and we got to break it down because it wouldn't slide down. How many people a year choke on meat?
I don't know.
There's quite.
I did learn the Heimlich maneuver, in case you are. If you're having a problem now.
Quite a few people a year.
Yes.
Hundreds of people a year choke because it's not broken down. It slides down there and they choke on it. Now, there's been many a times when I've eaten too fast on fruit. I always go, if the fruit, the juice of the fruit go down the wrong pipe and the oxygen is still there, I don't choke. If the oxygen still gets through, I recover like that. But when it comes to any dense food, and density is what we want to avoid. Dense foods is what dehydrates the body. I gotta talk to that camera. Dense food is what the body. So any pain, any swelling, any itching, any stiffness of the joints, that's dehydration of that area of the body. That's congestion of that area of the body. The opposite, that's the game that we got to play in our body. That's where we win or lose, because if you learn to live with swelling, stiffness, soreness, pain, burning, aching, inflammation, if you just accept it, like I see a lot of people walking around, young people, walking around hobbling on these things, or these rollers, or they're in those scooters. They've accepted something that they really didn't have to accept. They're losing the game to dehydration. They're losing the game to degeneration. Remember in the beginning of this, I said that's the greatest game on earth. They're losing the game from life to death. It's a slow death. And they're accepting a condition that they don't have to accept. All they have to do is go back to the alkalinizing side, get away from the dehydrating, get away from the acidity, and go back to the alkaline and hydrate. And all of a sudden, the stiffness goes away, the soreness goes away, the calcium deposits, the Alzheimer's, the loss of memory, all of that starts to subside because of hydration. That's the greatest game on earth. That's the greatest war on earth. There are two things. It's the war of life and death. There's war between degeneration and regeneration. There's war between alkaline and acidity. There's war between degeneration or hydration and dehydration. You see, and we are being bombarded with dehydrating, dense things that are clogging up the arteries, and life does not depend on the things that we are being sold and we're being programmed to eat. And so it's the greatest job in the world. It's the hardest job in the world. It's the loneliest job in the world, but it's the greatest job in the world to try to convince you that you have got to take that maiden voyage back to the earth, back to alkalinity, back to the things that's going to hydrate your body, save your life.
Is it possible that you're lonely simply because you won't go out to the burger joint
That's right.
with your friends? All right, now something that you mentioned, I have heard about the rate at which diseases that were formerly thought of as diseases of age are affecting younger and younger persons as our diet becomes more and more chemicalized. I've also heard from those various scientists that I mentioned earlier that diseases such as, an example, diseases of modern man, such as diabetes, are walking across third world countries as they become industrialized and as they adopt Western or American or commercialized. I wouldn't blame the West. I wouldn't blame the East. I'd blame commercialization. Commercial diets are causing these things to happen. And so-called modern progress has walked across China, happening, I'm told, in South Asia, in India. And of course, there are a variety of diseases, things which maybe in the medical industry or maybe related to diet or both, that are also affecting young people.
Everywhere they had coconut trees, they putting up cocoa machines. You know, they're changing cocoa. People take on our diseases. They did not have diseases. They made me cheaper. When we were living longer because the time in family eating meat was a luxury. And people didn't afford it, they were dying. And the cattle industry boom exploded. And you know, the commercials and you know, these commercials, and I have to tell myself, you know, person